today's video will be about anxiety, and the first question we have is, what is anxiety? So anxiety itself is a normal reaction to stress. When you have an exam and your stomach starts to feel weird, almost like there's butterflies in your stomach, or your stomach starts to hurt, and just that feeling of a nervousness before an exam, that's anxiety. Just that feeling that you get before a job interview, that nervous feeling, that's anxiety. That's a normal human reaction to those types of situations, but the important thing is to identify when it actually becomes a problem and when it's actually affecting your everyday life, your everyday functioning, and that is when it is an anxiety disorder, when it does start to kind of overcome you and overcome your life. So an anxiety disorder is, that feeling of anxiety that we talked about before, but it has a lot of debilitating symptoms, as well as the intense, excessive worry. I have a long list here, so it's going to look like I'm reading. So I'm just going to read off the list here. So there's things like shortness of breath, trembling, heart pounding, headaches, nausea, even sometimes getting to the point of vomiting, sweating, dizziness, lightheadedness, feeling of detachment. If it interferes with schoolwork and your daily life, and it can last weeks or months, or even years. So now we're going to move on to the actual anxiety disorders. There is a huge list of anxiety disorders. I'm going to talk about a couple. I'm not going to talk about it in full detail because I'll probably have videos on those specific disorders kind of later on. So this is just like a general summary of everything. So the first one is phobias. Phobias is intense fear of a specific thing, like an object. Panic disorder is repeated and unexpected panic attacks. And that can happen because of nothing. Things don't even really have to trigger it. They kind of just come on suddenly out of nowhere. There's agoraphobia. I know a lot of movies, a lot of comedies have made fun of agoraphobia. So some of you may know what agoraphobia is, but basically it's fear of no escape in a situation. So in Benchwarmers, I forget his name, that really funny guy, and he can't go outside. He's afraid to go outside. So that's agoraphobia. So it's kind of like that. A lot of people are actually afraid to leave their house or see people that they don't know, and that's agoraphobia. So that's just an example of it if you've seen Benchwarmers. So another one is social anxiety disorders. That's fear of being embarrassed or evaluated negatively by others. Typically everyone experiences this. We all want people to like us. That is normal, but when it becomes a social anxiety situation, is you're avoiding specific things, like if you're avoiding the cafeteria because there's too many people, you don't like being around too many people, you don't want to go to clubs because it's crowded, you don't want to go to certain gyms because it's crowded. So those types of situations give you a lot of anxiety. You just can't be around a lot of people or people that you don't know. A big one is generalized anxiety disorder. That's excessive worry of everyday situations for more than 6 months. So that is more of a chronic one, and that one tends to last quite a bit, and that's more of a general one, as it says in the name. It's a lot of things. Most things give you anxiety. There are 2 disorders that used to be recognized as anxiety disorders. They're not anymore. They were moved to a different category in the DSM manual. So that's OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, and PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. Anxiety and fear is a major part of these illnesses, which is why they used to be under the anxiety category, but later on they did more research and they moved them to a different category. So like I said, there are more anxiety disorders than this. There's separation anxiety and just a bunch more that I will talk about separately in a different video. I'm going to go into more detail with some of these in later videos, but that's just a list of some of them. So you're probably wondering, who does anxiety disorders affect? It can actually affect anyone at any age, especially now it's really common. It is actually one of the most common mental health problems. So you probably know a lot of people that have an anxiety disorder. It tends to be very normal. If you're a student, typically you develop some sort of anxiety disorder because you're constantly under stress. And it can be triggered by a specific event or a stressful life experience as well. It can come from that, but anyone can have anxiety. It's just if it persists and it's too often or too much and it's starting to affect your daily life, that's when it becomes a problem, and that is when it's classified as an anxiety disorder. But the only way of finding that out is if you seek a mental health professional or your family physician, who can then refer you to a mental health professional, and that's when it's decided whether it is an anxiety disorder or not. So what can actually be done about anxiety disorders? A lot of people don't know because they're like, anxiety is normal. I guess it is normal, but if you have a disorder, it is so hard to function. So at that point, it's not normal if you can't really function properly, and you should definitely seek help just in order to be able to control it, because there are ways to control it. So counseling is a really big one. They can actually do CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and that will help identify the problem behaviors and also replace them with helpful strategies instead. So CBT is a really good form of therapy that counselors use that can help with anxiety disorders, as well as medication. A lot of people are against medication, and I totally understand that, but there are some medications that can be taken as needed ones that can help when your anxiety is really, really bad. So it can help you deal with certain things that you can get through an exam a lot better if you take these things. So if needed, medication is something that does help, and that will be prescribed by usually by a psychiatrist or your family physician, depending on your situation, of course. Support groups, there are a lot of support groups, and support groups actually tend to help, because if you're constantly wondering why you feel this way, and if others feel this way, you can actually learn about other people's experiences, and it can actually help to relate to somebody in that situation. Also, there are self-help strategies like relaxation techniques, problem solving techniques, and like stress management. So those things you end up learning through online tools or through your counselor, or maybe other people who struggle with this can help you with that as well. So just some general tips to keep in mind. Remind yourself that the illness is the problem and you are not the problem. It is not your fault. It is not anybody's fault. So remember that. Also remember to be patient. These things take a long time, especially if you're really anxious. It's so hard to just like snap your fingers and be okay. That's not how it works. So definitely be patient with yourself and be patient with others that do have anxiety around you. If you're dealing with people around you that have anxiety, listen and offer support. Also set boundaries and seek support for yourself. If certain things make you uncomfortable, don't do it. Or try not to do it. I know certain things you kind of have to do and you're kind of forced to do it, but you know, if certain things bug you, definitely set boundaries for yourself. Don't push yourself. Take it one step at a time to conquer those fears or those emotions. So my personal experience with anxiety is a little different. So after I was depressed for several years is when the anxiety started. I actually don't recall feeling anxious while I was really depressed. I think the depression kind of overtook every other sort of feeling I had. I would say it probably started around my first year of university, which is typical. Usually in university, a lot of people develop anxiety. So that's around the time frame where I started experiencing that, when I was 18 years old, and it wasn't that bad. It would be bad during exams, like I would throw up right before an exam and feel like I was about to faint. So during that, it got bad, but other than that, it wasn't that bad. And then it started getting worse as time went on. I started kind of getting anxious over little things every single day. It still wasn't really affecting my daily life. I would say the lowest point of my anxiety was I was dating somebody 2 years ago, I think, at this point, around 2 years ago, probably a little bit more than that, and he himself was struggling with anxiety and has for most of his life, and that kind of like rubbed off on me just by like simply being with him. It just made my anxiety worse. If you're watching this, I am not blaming you at all, and I just want to put that out there. I'm definitely not blaming him. It's just, yeah, when you're with somebody who has anxiety, sometimes that just tends to make the other person anxious. It's how it goes. It would have been the other way around if I was the one in a worse situation. He would have probably ended up really anxious as well as a result of me. But at that point, my anxiety wasn't that bad, but his was. So yeah, it kind of rubbed off on me, and it got to the point where I was throwing up like 3 to 5 times a day, just because of how anxious I was. I didn't want to throw up. It's just like it was my body's response to that stress, and I couldn't really eat. I never had an appetite just because I was so anxious. So I got really, really, really skinny, and I looked kind of scary. I looked very bony. So I couldn't do anything. So at that point, I was actually put on Buspirone, which is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly. I don't really know how to pronounce it. But it's a benzodiazepine, and it's a take as needed one. So I could take up to 4 a day. You don't have to take any. Actually, if you don't want to, you can go an entire day without taking them. So at that point, I was taking all 4 until I got out of that relationship. And then after that, I still kind of had a hard time. And then I got really into the gym, and that really helped. So when I got really into the gym and I had a routine going, I barely felt anxious anymore. I wasn't taking any at all. And then I was good for about a year, and then I started getting anxious again. Not too bad. I would say the last couple months I had a bit of anxiety. It definitely wasn't affecting my overall functioning, but I started to take 1 benzodiazepine before bed. Yeah, I have really bad insomnia. I'm a terrible sleeper, and I used to be on sleeping pills, and I was trying to find something else that would help me sleep, and actually taking a benzodiazepine before bed does help me sleep. So that is what I take and what I have been taking for the last like 2-ish years. And yeah, I would say, yeah, the gym definitely was a big help. Going to therapy then and still helps with the anxiety, because literally everything would give me anxiety. I have struggled with panic disorder as well as generalized anxiety disorder. The panic disorder was not a shock to me, and it's not a shock to a lot of people. And if you're hearing it for the very first time and you know me, it's probably not a shock to you that I have panic disorder, because I am such a panicky human being. I panic literally over everything. I get like shortness of breath just like talking about a lot of things or doing certain things. So it's very evident that I have it. It just doesn't come to mind. You just like don't think, oh, they have panic disorder. And I've learned that actually when I was outpatient at Health Sciences. I actually learned that a long time ago. The panic thing. I didn't even really think I had like anxiety, but they diagnosed me with panic disorder back when I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder a couple years back. So I've known about it for a long time, and I would say the panic sometimes gets a little worse with certain things. But yeah, I'm just a panicky person overall, so that didn't surprise me. So that is my story on anxiety. I don't know. I'm probably missing some stuff that like I don't remember, because sometimes when you're really anxious, it's just like you have a distorted perception of things. So I feel like I'm probably forgetting some stuff, but this is kind of all I have to go off of right now. So that is my personal experience. If you are someone you know struggles with anxiety, try to find a good support system, because it really does help. Try to seek counseling, because it does help a lot. And like I said, the gym really helped me. If you get into a routine, exercise actually helps so much. Like you have no idea how much better your mood is like on a daily basis. You don't even have to work out every single day, but just like overall, it does really change your mood, and you don't experience those types of thoughts and feelings. So exercise, eating a little bit better does help as well. There's so many useful resources to help with anxiety, and just know that it's not your fault and that it happens to everyone. Everyone experiences anxiety, just some of us tend to struggle with it a lot more than others, and that is okay. It's okay to struggle, and it's okay to seek help. Alright, I will see you next time. There might not be a video for a while because I'm actually leaving for a trip in a couple of days, so I will probably see you when I get back. I don't think I'll be filming anything while I'm away, so this may or may not be the last video. See you guys in a couple weeks then.